Hey everyone, welcome back. Okay, let's picture this. You're hauling a pretty heavy backpack, right? Feeling that, that familiar ache starting in your shoulders. And then you reach down, you find that little strap across your chest, the sternum strap, you cinch it up, and bam, suddenly there's this almost immediate, relief. You feel it, don't you? Like the weight just shifted somehow. Well, you're definitely not imagining it. Today, we're doing a deep dive into something maybe you haven't thought much about: the surprising biomechanics, the clever engineering behind that humble sternum strap. We've looked into some articles, research papers, even a really helpful diagram showing forces to figure out exactly how this small bit of gear makes such a big difference. So, our mission today: let's unpack how the strap works, how it redistributes load, changes force vectors, and ultimately gives you that comfort. We want you leaving not just feeling better on your next hike, but knowing why. So let's jump right into it. That first feeling when you tighten the strap, it really does feel like the pressure just kind of lifts off your shoulders, doesn't it? It's really noticeable.
Oh, absolutely. That's a universal experience,
Hmm.
and our sources definitely back that up. But the key thing to grasp, and this is crucial, is that the strap doesn't magically make your pack lighter. The actual weight, the physics of that load, it doesn't
Hmm.
change. Instead, what it's doing is fundamentally redistributing that load. It's changing the mechanics of how the straps interact with your body.
Hmm.
And that mechanical shift is why you feel that instant, very real relief.
Okay, right. So no magic involved, just smart physics. But how? How does something so, well, seemingly simple achieve such a significant change in how it feels? What's actually going on, like biomechanically?
Yeah, good question. Let's break down the mechanics of the body's response. First off, something our sources really emphasize is the strap angle change. Think about it. Without that sternum strap clipped, your main shoulder straps tend to naturally pull outwards, away from your chest, right? And that means they're pulling almost straight down on the very tops of your shoulders, often digging into that bony part, the acromion. It's quite a focused, sometimes sharp pressure. But here's the clever part. When you tighten that sternum strap even just a little bit, it pulls those shoulder straps inward towards the center of your chest. They become more parallel as they run down your torso. This reduces that outward splay, that outward angle. And why that matters is it converts a good chunk of that harsh downward force into more of an inward compression across your chest. This inward pull spread across your sternum and pectoral muscles, a broader, less sensitive area, feels much lighter, much more comfortable on those pointy shoulder bones. It's basically changing the leverage.
Ah, okay. So it's doing more than just stopping the straps from slipping off. It's actually changing how they pull on us. It takes that downward digging feeling and turns it into more of almost a supportive hug across the chest. That sounds quite elegant, actually.
It really is
Yeah.
elegant. And that leads perfectly into the next key idea: force distribution.
Hmm.
If you think about the bigger picture, that sternum strap is essentially taking some of the tension that was focused on those small shoulder points and spreading it across your upper torso, a much wider area. So instead of the whole load feeling like it's cutting into the acromion, which, let's face it, isn't designed for that kind of direct pressure, a significant part of that force is now borne by your sternum and your pectoral muscles.
Mm.
You're basically shifting the load onto a stronger, broader structure. That's huge for comfort over time.
Gotcha. So it's literally taking the pressure off the most sensitive spots, those bony bits, and spreading it out, sharing the load across a part of your body that's, well, stronger and can handle it better. That makes complete sense for why it helps prevent fatigue and soreness on longer trips.
Precisely. And there's another layer to this: stabilization. It's not just about the direction of the main force. By keeping those shoulder straps pulled in and aligned, the sternum strap stops them from slipping sideways. You know how annoying that can be, especially with a heavier shifting pack. This stability is really important because it reduces what engineers call micro movements and shear forces on your shoulders. Shear force isn't just downward pressure, it's more like a rubbing or sideways dragging stress. Think constant tiny adjustments and friction. Over time, these little shifts and rubs can be just as tiring and uncomfortable as the main weight, even if you don't consciously notice them at first. They just wear you down. So preventing that subtle chafing and shifting actually saves a lot of energy and prevents discomfort later on.
Right. That difference between shear and direct pressure. That's a really useful distinction. Those little rubs, those constant tiny adjustments, yeah, they definitely add up and can become a real pain on a long hike. Okay, so it stabilizes, it redistributes. But this brings up a practical point. Can you overdo it? Is there such a thing as cranking that sternum strap too tight?
Oh, definitely. Yes. There's a clear breathing versus stability trade-off here. It's true that generally, the tighter you pull it, the more stable the pack feels, and the better the load seems to shift off the shoulders.
Hmm.
However, if you go too tight, you can actually start to restrict the natural expansion of your rib cage. It can make it harder to breathe deeply from your upper chest, and that can lead to discomfort, maybe shallow breathing or feeling winded, especially when you're working hard, like climbing a hill. So the advice from our sources is pretty consistent. Find the sweet spot. You want it just tight enough to stop the straps from drifting outwards or slipping around, but not so tight that it feels constricting or like you can't take a full deep breath easily. Comfort is key.
That's a really critical point. Yeah, you definitely don't want to solve shoulder pain only to create breathing problems.
Hmm.
It also makes me think backpacks aren't just individual parts, are they? They're designed as a system. How does the sternum strap work with, say, a hip belt? Because hip belts are also meant to carry a lot of the weight.
That's a great connection to make. They absolutely work in synergy, but their main jobs are a bit different. Ideally, if you have a pack with a good hip belt, and you've got it tightened correctly around your iliac crest, those hip bones,
Yeah.
then most of the pack's vertical weight, the main downward pull, should already be transferred directly onto your pelvis. Your hips and legs are much better suited to carrying heavy loads than your shoulders.
Right, that's the goal of a hip belt.
Exactly. So in that ideal scenario, the sternum strap's role becomes primarily about stabilization and upper body control. It stops the shoulder straps from pulling outwards, yes, but maybe more importantly, it prevents the top of the pack from swaying side to side as you move. It essentially makes the shoulder straps act more like guides or balance points, just keeping the pack snug against your back rather than being the main things holding the weight up. It's all about optimizing the whole system so each part does its job effectively.
Okay, that makes sense.
But if you're using a smaller pack that maybe doesn't have a hip belt, or perhaps you haven't tightened the hip belt properly, then the sternum strap suddenly becomes much more important for that initial load distribution off the shoulders. In those cases, it plays a bigger role in taking that direct downward force and shifting it across the chest, simply because the hips aren't doing that job. So its function can kind of shift depending on the pack and how you're wearing it. It adapts within the system.
That really clarifies its role. It's not just this one-trick pony. Its importance and function can change depending on the rest of the system. It's part of a team effort. It's actually quite compelling how such a, small strap can be so critical for making the whole carry system work better, improving comfort, and how long you can keep going. It really drives home that point you made earlier. It's not about making the pack lighter. It's about cleverly re-engineering how those forces hit your body.
Precisely. It's worth repeating. The total weight doesn't change. Physics is physics. But what the sternum strap brilliantly achieves is a precise change in the vector barrier, the direction of the forces acting on your shoulders. It takes that sharp, potentially painful downward pull and transforms it into a set of forces that are more distributed across your torso, making it much more manageable and comfortable, especially over long distances.
And, to really help visualize this, one of the sources we looked at had this excellent diagram. It basically shows the forces with and without the strap. Imagine you could see arrows representing the forces. Without the sternal strap, you see these distinct arrows pulling outwards and straight down on the shoulders, illustrating that sharp focused pressure we talked about. But then when you picture the sternum strap tightened, the diagram shows those force arrows, maybe let's call them green arrows, being pulled inwards. The angle changes. And crucially, it highlights this new force, maybe the purple arrow, showing the inward compression across the chest that the strap creates. This visually demonstrates how the load shifts away from just hammering down on the shoulders.
Yes, that visual is incredibly helpful, isn't it? It makes it so clear. It powerfully shows how that simple strap takes what would be a direct, potentially uncomfortable downward force and turns it into a much more distributed, manageable load across the stronger parts of the torso. It's a fantastic, practical example of applying basic physics principles to solve an everyday design problem. Really quite smart.
It really is remarkable how such a small, often completely overlooked detail can have such a, profound effect on our comfort, our stability, just our overall experience of carrying something. It's definitely one of those things you use all the time, but maybe never really stop to think about the ingenuity behind it.
Absolutely. And what's fascinating here, I think, is how it shows that thoughtful design, even in something as basic as a backpack part, can leverage fundamental biomechanics and physics. It solves a common problem, shoulder fatigue, and makes a huge difference in the real world, improving how we function, how comfortable we are.
Yeah, this whole deep dive, it kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other sort of unsung heroes of design are out there, quietly working away in the everyday objects we use, improving our comfort, our efficiency, without us ever really stopping to appreciate the genius behind them? Maybe it's the shape of your chair or the grip on a tool, so next time you're out and about, maybe hiking or just commuting, and you tighten that sternum strap, you might just feel that subtle but really significant shift of forces we've been talking about. And maybe, just maybe, you'll have a newfound appreciation for that little piece of webbing and plastic. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive today.